Europe is struggling with a surge of immigration. Every year, millions cross its borders, some fleeing war, others seeking welfare. France, Germany, Sweden. The pattern is the same. Uncontrolled inflows, no-go zones, rising crime. Gangs dominate districts, police hesitate to intervene, and residents fear going out at night. One country has drawn the line: Denmark. No asylum, asset confiscations, deportations to Africa. The rules are clear. No right to stay, you're out, refuse to adapt, no place for you. The European Union condemn it, but Danes stand firm. What once seemed impossible is now being adopted by other nations. Denmark refuses to follow the rest of Europe. Nearly 90% of its population are ethnic Danes, and politicians stress that shared values are the nation's foundation. Losing them would mean losing everything. 30 years ago, things looked different. Denmark was the first country to sign the UN Refugee Convention and welcomed people in need for decades. The turning point came in 2015, when a massive wave of migrants reached Europe. Watching Sweden, Danes began asking whether a small country could handle integrating so many culturally different newcomers, and whether their welfare system could survive it. The phrase, "Danes first," soon became mainstream, even among left-leaning voters. In Denmark, the government openly prioritizes citizens' well-being. As many residents say, if we work and pay high taxes to support the system, why should outsiders receive the same for free? Danish politicians managed to reach consensus. Unlike much of Europe, where strict migration policy is associated with the right wing, in Denmark, all major parties from conservatives to the center-left speak with one voice. This ensures continuity regardless of who governs. The first restrictions came in 2015 under a center-right government, and when the Social Democrats took power 4 years later, they not only maintained but tightened them. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen declared the goal clearly: zero asylum seekers. Public support is strong. Around 70% of Danes back this approach. Neighboring Sweden chose the opposite path by welcoming hundreds of thousands of refugees. The result has been record crime, daily shootings and bombings in Malmö, Stockholm, and Gothenburg. In 2023, Sweden recorded the highest number of shooting victims in Europe, with gangs recruiting minors in districts beyond state control. The contrast is obvious. Crossing the Öresund Bridge, you see crime rising in Sweden, while in Denmark it is falling. For Danes, this is evidence that their tough policy works, and they have no intention of abandoning it. Step by step, Denmark has built a system that has virtually eliminated uncontrolled immigration. The media deliver a unified message, often highlighting Sweden's problems and repeating the mantra, "We will not become Sweden." Anyone who questions strict policies is immediately asked, "Do you want us to end up like them?" But Denmark went further than any other country. In 2021, the government revoked hundreds of Syrians' residence permits, declaring parts of Syria safe. With no deportation deal in place, many were sent to so-called departure centers, often in former prisons. No right to work, constant monitoring, and no benefits. Equally controversial was the 2016 jewelry law, which allowed authorities to confiscate cash and valuables above 10,000 kroner, so migrants would cover their own expenses. International media compared it to wartime plunder, and the Council of Europe warned it could violate basic rights. Denmark stood firm, arguing that Danes must also use their savings before receiving welfare. In practice, few valuables were seized, but the symbolic message was clear. Denmark does not want to be an attractive destination for migrants. The same goal lay behind extending family reunification waiting times from 1 year to 3. This policy was meant to further discourage asylum applications. In 2018, the government went a step further by introducing a package of laws aimed at eliminating ghettos. The goal was to dismantle closed neighborhoods where immigrants lived in their own world, isolated from the rest of society. The core of the new legislation was the creation of an official list of districts that would be subject to strict restrictions. And how were these areas defined? More than 50% of the residents came from non-Western countries, mainly the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. On top of that came high unemployment, low education levels, significant crime rates, and serious integration problems, such as the majority of residents not speaking Danish. The government concluded that ordinary integration programs were no longer enough. Tough direct measures were needed, so 22 special rules were introduced that applied only to these designated ghettos. Crimes committed in these areas carried double the penalty compared to the rest of the country. Children as young as 1 year old were required to spend 25 hours a week in classes on Danish values. The government also passed laws allowing entire housing blocks to be demolished and residents forcibly relocated to break up these tight immigrant communities. It was a clear signal to the rest of Europe. Denmark would not wait for the problems to solve themselves. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said openly, "We cannot allow whole districts to live by different rules than the rest of the country." For human rights organizations, this was a direct attack on specific ethnic groups. Critics argued it was not really about fighting crime or unemployment, but about targeting Muslims and immigrants from Africa. United Nations and the Council of Europe voiced concerns about the discriminatory nature of Denmark's policies. Yet despite international criticism, most Danes supported these measures. Polls once again showed that about 70% of society agreed with the government. These districts are a problem, and the problem must be solved, regardless of what foreign organizations think. In 2021, Denmark went even further. A law was passed allowing asylum seekers to be deported to Africa before their applications were even reviewed. If you arrive in Denmark on your own and ask for asylum, you will not stay in the country. Your case won't even be processed there. Instead, you will be transferred to a facility, for example, in Rwanda. The Prime Minister made it clear, Denmark does not want refugees arriving on their own initiative. If someone is to be accepted, it will only be through the official UN system. The strict stance is directly tied to Denmark's social model. The country has one of the best welfare systems in the world. Free education, excellent healthcare, generous pensions. It's the foundation of Danish society, and the government stresses that it only works if everyone contributes. Danes pay some of the highest taxes in the world on average, more than 50% of their income. In return, they receive security, stability, and a high quality of life. But as they say themselves, they are not willing to support people who refuse to work or integrate. They see what is happening in Sweden, France, and Germany, where many immigrants end up living on welfare permanently, with citizens footing the bill. Denmark is determined not to follow that path. For the Danes, the welfare state is a red line. That is why they support strict migration policies and tight rules for access to benefits. One Danish politician put it this way, "Our welfare system is for those who contribute to it, not for everyone who simply arrives here." Denmark not only passed tough laws, but also openly communicated its stance to the world. The government even went so far as to buy advertisements in Lebanese newspapers, clearly warning potential migrants. Today, Denmark is one of the safest countries in Europe. The economy runs smoothly, and the welfare system is not overloaded because from the start, Danes made it clear they would not pretend the problem didn't exist. The number of refugees is now the lowest in decades. Unemployment among immigrants stands at just 3.5%, one of the best results in European Union. Crime has dropped by 15% in the past 5 years, while social spending has been reduced by 4 billion kroner annually. For the Danes, this is proof that smart decisions bring real results. They don't see it as racial prejudice, but simply as common sense. The state works because its citizens come first. While many other European countries struggle with rising crime and overstretched welfare systems, Denmark has shown there is another way. But why can Denmark do this when others can't? The answer lies in a unique status within the European Union that gives Denmark freedom in matters of migration and asylum. It all began in 1992, when Danes rejected the Maastricht Treaty in a referendum. This treaty created the European Union as we know it today, including its common migration policy. Denmark rebelled. After long negotiations, Brussels finally gave in, granting Denmark a special exemption, the so-called opt-out. What does that mean in practice? Denmark does not have to follow EU asylum regulations. Unlike other member states, the Danes decide for themselves who gets protection and who doesn't. They can also deport asylum seekers to countries outside of Europe. EU law forbids sending refugees beyond EU borders, but Denmark is not bound by that rule. That's why it was able to pass legislation allowing deportations to Rwanda, something Germany, France, or Poland could not legally do. So while other EU countries are forced to comply with Brussels quotas and take in migrants, Denmark can simply say no, and that's the end of it. Brussels may protest, may criticize, but it has no tools to force Denmark's hand, and that is exactly why the Danes act as they see fit. Denmark has not only shown that migration can be restricted, it has proven that when a government is not afraid to make tough decisions, the people will support it. A few years ago, the EU condemned Denmark, accusing it of lacking solidarity and treating refugees inhumanely. But today, many of those same critics are copying the Danish model. Sweden is tightening asylum rules and cutting benefits, with its government openly admitting, "We made a mistake." Germany is pulling back from its open border policies, and Britain wants to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda exactly like Denmark. The Danes are outraged, and it's not hard to see why. They point to the hypocrisy. When Denmark imposed tough policies, it was condemned across Europe. But now when other countries do the very same thing, suddenly no one protests. And look at Britain, once a global superpower, now plagued by rising crime, a faltering economy, and political scandals. How did it come to this? Why do millions of Britons feel betrayed? And why did their government ignore serious crimes in the name of political correctness? All of this coming soon. Don't miss the next part. Subscribe to World in Depth.